Thank you.
This morning you presented the outcome of the MRC Global Fraud Survey. What was the setup of the survey and what was different than, let's say, the last years?
Sure. So we've partnered on the survey with CyberSource for many years now. What we've really done this year compared to last few years, we've really increased the scope. So for example, 5 years ago when we did our fraud survey, we had 112 merchants respond to the survey. This time we have 2,800. So that was a huge increase. And as compared to last year, we did really well last year, but we had 494 last year. So the number has increased drastically. And we've made it truly global this time around. We've always kind of had a global survey, but the scope was really to try to make it as global as possible. CyberSource has hired GFK, which is a company that does this very, very well to field the survey for them. So it's really been a great effort on all parties. We've optimized the questions, which is something we do every year. We take all the feedback that we get from merchants. We try to kind of keep it short enough to where we get people to respond to the entire thing and we don't have a big drop-off rate, but we make sure we ask all of the questions. And the real difference this year was that we've focused on the strategy of the fraud department much more than just KPIs. Now, just to be clear, KPIs are still included in the survey, of course, because those are really relevant, obviously. Absolutely. But we've seen a trend in our industry that more and more merchants are looking at fraud and payments departments as more of a strategic department, which is great to see, actually. Great to see for someone from the industry, because historically we've had such a hard time for a fraud department to get resources, get additional people, tools, things like that. So for companies to look at fraud departments more strategically really helps that.
Okay, so in this survey, you talked about the 3 pillars of effective fraud management.
Sure. Yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit on these 3 pillars?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we've noticed is that the top performers and the merchants that we know are really good at fraud prevention and maximizing conversion and that kind of thing, equally rated those 3 pillars, which are to maximize revenue, minimize operational cost, and minimize declines, at the same level. So they're equally important, right? Equally important, and that's kind of what you need. You need to pay attention to those 3 pillars in order to really be as successful as possible. A lot of companies look at fraud losses as the ultimate sort of metric, and this is something that we actually don't necessarily agree with, because declines ultimately are much worse for the bottom line. And we've seen a lot of different merchants sort of open up their systems a little bit to reduce declines. And fraud losses tend to go up a little bit, but for every decline of a good customer, you tend to lose a lot more customers due to social media now, right? Yeah. Everyone posts about their bad experiences they have. Most people don't post about the good ones. So, if you're a first-time customer at a merchant's website and you get declined for no good reason, or not a reason that you're aware of, you tell all your friends, you post it on Facebook, you post it on Twitter, that kind of thing. So you tend to lose a lot more customers for every decline than the money you lose due to fraud losses.
And what are for these top performers in the industry? What are still the key challenges for fraud managers?
Sure. So we've seen, in the past couple of years, we've seen increases in account takeovers. The US has finally implemented EMV. It's still a work in progress, but due to that, we've seen an increase in account takeovers because fraudsters are shifting their focus. Regulations are a big one. So we've seen, GDPR regulations have caused a lot of changes. But especially in the fraud and payments industry, PSD2, SCA, no one really has an answer. It's coming. It's very interesting because it's a point of discussion that we talk about all the time, and it's something that still needs to be solved. But that's it's an issue for a lot of merchants, and everyone's trying to solve it at the same time. So it's really interesting to see what happens there.
Now, what do you expect that happens on the 14th of September?
Well, I expect that nobody's going to be ready. we're probably going to see, you know, the SCA piece, you know, merchants still utilizing 3DS 1.0, for example, just because they haven't quite figured out 2.0 yet, or I guess another form of you know, secure consumer authentication, but they will, you know, they'll figure it out, you know, within the next 12 months or so. I'm sure they'll figure it out. So I think, you know, we're going to see a change, and I think the typical fraud losses that we're used to are going to go down, and fraudsters once again are going to shift their focus on other areas. So we're going to see things like loyalty fraud probably go up as they shift their focus.
Yeah. And maybe also, you know, other cards, non-European cards.
Of course, yeah.
Also...
yeah. It'll be really interesting to see, you know, for our Madrid conference that's coming up in September. That's right after the deadline.
Yeah.
So I'm really curious to find out what the conversation is going to be about at that conference, see how, you know, the implementation has affected different merchants, what they've done.
Yeah.
So I'm very much looking forward to that.